and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. Today I am doing the Bookish Beginnings tag. So this is a tag that was invented, I guess, by Lauren at Reads and Daydreams, and I haven't only actually seen her video, so I need to seek out a few more of her videos, but I loved the idea of it, that you could talk about bookish beginnings, basically. So without further ado, let us get going. I think we've got a cat joining us. Hey! You gonna get down? You on the camera? Oh, Minnie, no. So let's get going. Cat interruption over, let's get going. So the first question is, what did you like to read as a child? Now, I was an avid reader as a child. I used to go to the library with my mum or dad, and I used to bring back about 15 books, and I used to start all of them, all at once. That is something I can not even imagine myself doing now, because I get so confused reading more than one book at once, which I would love to be able to do nowadays, but I can't. But I was absolutely mad about reading. So one of my favourite things that I loved reading when I was a young child was Roald Dahl. So my dad bought this for me a few years ago, and it is all of the Roald Dahl books. They don't all fit in here, which is weird. That one probably will, so I have to keep some of them out. So when I was younger, I used to love getting these out from the library. I don't actually think I owned any of these when I was younger, but yeah, I used to love getting these out from the library. And my favourite Roald Dahl book, probably out of all of them, I've got fond memories of all of them. I loved Matilda. I used to think I was Matilda. I loved Matilda. I love Matilda and James the Giant Peach. Obviously Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. One of my favourites now, which I don't think I read when I was younger, was SEO Trot, and I just think it's the cutest little love story ever. So Roald Dahl was one of my main loved books when I was younger. I also used to read a lot of Enid Blyton, Famous Five, Secret Seven. I had a lot of her picture books and things like that, and I loved reading those, and they were really easy reading, and I just used to fly through those, so that was great. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is another thing I used to read when I was younger. I've only got the Chronicles here, which I never read when I was younger. I only read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, but I think I've spoken about this in a previous video where my mum or my dad had told me I'd loved it, and I reserved it at the library and went and picked it up and just watched it and absolutely adored it and still love it to this day. And I reread it all the time. It's just such a lovely, lovely story. So that's another. And then I also, when I was a bit older, I guess, I would read a lot of Jacqueline Wilson. My sister and I used to love The Bed and Breakfast Star, Double Act, the Lottie Project, and the Tracy Beaker ones, obviously. We used to love those, and I remember handing in like pieces of work at school, which were just basically illustrated like a Jacqueline Wilson book. So very original I was when I was younger. And finally, I used to love the Babysitters Club's book, and I actually own one of these books. I don't know what I've done with it. I saw it in a charity shop and it was like 75p. I bought it. Minnie, you're being a very naughty girl. Come here and sit down nicely. Yeah, I bought a Babysitters Book Club. You're gonna sit down. I bought a Babysitters Club book, Christie's Great Idea, which is the first one, and I just used to love all the characters in there, and I just remember thinking I was so grown up reading these Babysitters Club books. I just think they were amazing. You don't want to stay? Oh, David, you'll have to get her down again. No, you can't sit there. Was it just her face?
Just her eyes. What's your eyes?
So yeah, they're the books that I used to read when I was younger. So question 2 is, what was your first adult fiction book you read? And I can't remember specifically. I mean, as I said, I used to read a lot when I was younger, and I can't ever remember thinking, going from like the children's section to then to the teen section, from the teen section to the adult section. I picked up, I used to read like my mum and dad's books on holiday when I run out of books and things like that, but nothing that sticks out. But one of the first books I remember reading thinking, maybe this is a little bit too adult for me, was Memoirs of a Geisha. I remember reading it and thinking, there was some slightly rude bits in there. It was a very popular book when I was younger, so I remember reading that. I also remember reading, and my mother should be ashamed of herself that she let me read these, is Martina Cole books, which are like the most hardcore crime rapey books you've ever heard of, and I used to read those when I was younger, and now I think I would struggle to read them nowadays. So I can't believe I read them when I was younger. My mum and her sisters and my nan used to read them, and then I used to get hold of them somehow and read them as well. So shame on you, mother, that you let me read those. Question number 3 is, what is the first classic that you read? So I remember vividly reading an abridged version of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Minnie, what are you doing? I remember reading an abridged version of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women, and during which, and cover your ears if you haven't read it, although it's a classic so you should know, the book I read, Beth didn't die. So I was like, oh, it's supposed to be, I'm sure one of these sisters is supposed to die. And in the abridged version, Beth doesn't die. So that was probably the first like classic I came about, even though it was abridged. But the first actual classic that I remember reading for fun, and not just because school had told me to, was Wuthering Heights, which is a book that I absolutely love. I've got about 6 copies of Wuthering Heights. This is my favourite at the moment. It's a cloth-bound classic. I collect these, and this is just beautiful. It's got all the thorns and things like that. And yeah, I remember reading this and just being like, ooh, this is what classics are all about then, are they? Frankenstein is another one I read, and I think that was maybe the first one that I read that I actually understood. I've got a cloth-bound classic of that as well. Let me get that. Oh, and Frankenstein is another classic. I remember reading this and actually being like, oh my god, this is a classic, and I understand it. So that's probably the first one that I read and actually bought in. Wuthering Heights, I still read it now and find bits in there that I had forgotten about or had missed the first time round, and I reread this like once a year. So they are the classics, the first classics that I read. Which book helped you discover your favourite genre? So when people ask me what my favourite genre is, I never really know what to say, because I will give anything a go, and I more have favourite authors than favourite genres. One of the genres that I always sort of turn to when looking for a book recommendation is young adult fiction, YA fiction, and the book that brought me into that was obviously The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. So before I'd read The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, I'd almost like poo-pooed young adult fiction a bit, thinking, no, it's not something I'm interested in, I bet it's all like Twilight stuff and all of this. But after I read this, I was like, God, I want to read more stuff by John Green, and I actively sought out books that were like I remember finding something on Pinterest that said, if you liked The Fault in Our Stars, then you will like these books, and I would go and buy those books or ask people to buy them for me. And so I think this really started my interest in YA fiction, and it's something that is just still going now, and still finding books YA fiction that I absolutely love. Question number 5 is, what was your first prize-winning book that you have read? Like sought out a prize-winning book. So I've read a lot of prize-winning books, like past Man Booker award winners. I've read some Costa Coffee book awards, but nothing I've actually sought out because it's won a prize. The book that I am going to be reading shortly, and I'm probably going to be buying this soon, either on the Kindle or in real life book, is The Paying Guests by Sarah Waters, which is the book that won the Bailey's Women's Literary Prize for Fiction award this year. So that's something that I will actively be seeking out. I mean, I'll be honest, I heard about it on BookTube, so that's why. But when I found out that it had also won this, I was like, I'd be really interested in reading that. Question 6 is, what was your first translated fiction that you read? I don't think I've ever read anything I've never actively sought out things that have been translated thinking, oh, I would love to read that. Again, recently on BookTube, I've seen a lot of people talking about Bonjour Tristesse, which is a book that I would be interested in reading. But again, I found about it through BookTube, not because I think, oh, I want to read a piece of translated fiction. But it's definitely something I'm always looking for more new reading experiences. So it's definitely something I would try out. And lastly, the question is, why are you here on BookTube, and how did you film your first video? So I came about BookTube once I was on the Book People website, and I was just thinking, God, I wish I knew, like my book recommendations, I'd always sort of looked at things like the Richard and Judy Book Club recommendations and things like that. So I think I typed in something like book blogs. I wanted to see what people were reading, and it came up with 10 booktubers. And the first one that I clicked on was Sana from Books and Quills, and I just never turned back after that. And then I sort of got linked into people like Jean's Bookish Thoughts and Jane Campbell, and just sort of like it all sort of spiraled from there. And then straight away I remember watching these videos thinking, I could do this. Like, I talk about books all the time to anyone that will listen, and I remember watching it thinking, I could definitely do this. And I think it took me like 3 days to thinking it over before I was like, right, I'm just going to film one. And I remember sitting on my sofa and getting my boyfriend to film like a sort of impromptu booktube video, which I hope we've deleted now because it was a bit awful. And I just remember thinking I could really improve on this, and I've just never looked back really. Like, I love YouTube, and I think it had been a bit sort of like misused by me in the past. I just sort of like used to watch cat videos and things like that. Now BookTube has opened up things that I never even knew existed before, like now I'm like mad on FoodTube as well with Jamie Oliver, and then there's like the guys from Sorted Food, and I love Zoella and Fleur de Vos and things like that. And I never even knew about these people before I started BookTube, which I think is quite unusual, because I think quite often people come to it, as Lauren said in her video, people come to BookTube having looked up makeup tutorials and then going that way. So, and I just love it. And I was talking to my friends about it and saying it's no effort for me to do this at all. I literally put the camera on, sit down in front of my lounge wallpaper and just talk about books, and I absolutely love doing it. So my first video was my June book haul, which I will link below, and I just remember sitting there with this big pile of books that I planned to read for June, and just talking through them, and I just remember loving every minute of it, and then sharing it on Facebook, sharing it on Twitter, and just seeing the views go up, and it's like something like 430 views now, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that ever happened. And I just love it, and I love BookTube. And if people are thinking about, if people are watching this thinking, I wish I could do that, you can do this, and you just need to do whatever you're passionate about or got an interest in. Just sit down and film it, because it's just such an enjoyable thing to be part of. And I just love the fact that I've taken my hobby of reading to a new dimension of just talking about it on YouTube. So thanks, Lauren, for the book tag Bookish Beginnings. I absolutely love doing it. If you're watching this and you would like to do this, then consider yourself tagged, but I would particularly like to see what Verity from Nerdy English Girl and Katie from Books and Things have to say on this. So I'd love to see you do this tag, and I'll see you all again next week. Thanks.